Exploitation by the non-tribal people of the tribal people ultimately resulted in the unrest among the tribes. On top of it came the administrators under the central and provincial rules. They had their own kind of indifference dealing with the tribals. They were often harsh and unfriendly. Even forest laws were not very friendly so far as the tribals are concerned, because all forest laws generally went in favor of the administering group rather than the needs of the tribal people. Sometimes lack of legislation to stop the land alienation also resulted in the travails of the tribal people. And then whoever wanted to use the development programs and improve found it very difficult because of the lack of credit facilities, ineffective government measures. In fact, whenever tribals were evicted from a piece of land, whether it was forest or any other piece of land, in the name of building dams, even to this day this problem has been going on. Government measures to rehabilitate them has not been adequate at all. Even the compensation given to the tribal people evicted from wherever they were living have been very inadequate. We see this problem continuing even to this day. And then there are committees and commissions appointed in order to look into the problems of tribal people and suggest ways and measures of overcoming them. But then there is always a delay in the implementation of these recommendations. We now look into the tribal classification criteria. Listed as scheduled tribes right from the beginning at the time of the establishment of the Constitution of India. Negritos and Astroloid survived as forest tribes. Maybe they shied away from getting listed, shied away from getting analyzed demographically. They have lived isolated in the forest. Mongoloid was also considered as Adivasis still, but not all of them have come onto the list for scheduled tribes. Demand for tribal classification now even today continues. In fact, the Meitei of Manipur, who are otherwise pretty advanced, and Rajbangshi of Assam and Gujars of Gujarat and Rajasthan have all been pretty advanced, but still they have found ways and means and reasons and factors to demand that they must be listed as tribes for getting the benefits of development and progress. In this episode, we have tried to understand how complicated has been the problem of developing the tribal people in terms of the problems that they have gone through prior to independent India coming into existence. The most dominant factor which will not help the tribal rehabilitation, tribal development and tribal welfare is the British policy. British had a policy of totally isolating the tribes, just give them what they needed. So much so, even to this day, we are paying the price in terms of the demands made by different types of tribes in different parts of India, particularly in the northeast, demanding identity as a separate state or even a separate area which should be their own with total independence to govern themselves. Such has been the demand, mainly because of the isolation that they have gone through. As such, we have known earlier that tribals have been living a more or less totally isolated life economically, socio-culturally, physically and geographically. On top of it, what happened during the British period brought in a further degree of distinct identity among the tribal people. To make matters worse, this isolation of tribal people also brought in a totally apathetic attitude among the non-tribal people, which even today we find that the apathy has been so strong that whenever non-tribal people come in contact with the tribal people, they have absolutely no hesitation in trying to take the tribal people for a ride, cheat them and exploit them. All this happened until the reformers came onto the scene, when there was a demand for policy change, but we are yet to see the real changes coming about in the policy of dealing with the tribal people towards a meaningful development and welfare, so that they can become part of the mainstream called independent India. Thanks in a way to the isolationist approach of the British rule on the one hand, and the resultant apathy of the larger population towards the tribal people on the other hand, what happened whenever the tribals and non-tribal people came to live together, they merely coexisted next to each other. There was not much of give and take between them, in the sense there was no acculturation process. Why this is important for us to note is, if tribals today have to be made part of the mainstream, tribals and non-tribals alike must try to understand each other, what acculturation process provides for. This did not happen during the British rule, for which even to this day we are finding it difficult on the one hand in the minds of the tribals to think of the non-tribal people as their own people in the land, and on the other hand in the minds of the non-tribal people to have consideration for the problems that the tribal people are facing. Unless this give and take takes place, it will not be possible to bring about a more meaningful development and welfare of the tribal people, because after all non-tribal people have to be involved in the process either as a part of the system or as a part outside the system, coexisting along with the development programs and their implementation.